And as you see in this first slide, the topic is really keeping the fire alive. One of the things that I've noticed is that there are a lot of what I would call strengths fanatics around the world, fans of this interest in what makes us unique. That prayer that we just had, people are interested in how God has created us, and that fire needs to be stoked from time to time, both in the people who do this, those of you who are coaches, maybe those of you who are considering coaches, but also thinking about how do we kind of make this fire spread out into our parishes and into our communities. So that's really the topic that I want to talk with you about tonight. The first thing I want to kind of think about is just to think a little bit about coaching. What does a strengths coach do? And I'd like to get some of you who are online, this is a place where I'd like you to do some chatting here. I'd like you to just write in some comments what you consider coaching to be so that I can share with some of those. So don't be shy, type away, and as you read some of those things, I'll try to do two things at one time here. What does a strengths coach do? And I'll just kind of talk a little bit about I think they do a number of things. I think one of the things strengths coaches do is they listen. They kind of understand who someone is by listening to what they say. I think they also talk occasionally. They think. I just heard something here. I don't know what that means. Oh, here we go. We've got some things from Gwendolyn saying help people realize their full potential of the gifts given to them. Joe Kavanaugh, hello Joe. Here's what Joe said: draw out what God has put in by asking great questions. I think that's another great thing that coaches do. In some ways, I don't think coaching is unlike a lot of other kind of helping professions, where I think a great coach is sometimes like a great parent. I mean, to some degree, coaches do what parents do for their children. They see talent in them and they invest in it. Jamie said advocate, listen, ask, love. Boy, no kidding. I actually was thinking about we have this strengths formula you've probably heard of if you've gone through the program. Talent plus knowledge plus skill equals strength. I would add one more thing to that. Talent plus knowledge plus skill plus love equals strength. I think when you add love, and I think that's something that those of us who are followers of Christ, our coaching should be even better than those who are not, when you add the power of God's love and the Spirit. Let's see, who else? We've got Jenny said, help to direct people in a direction that will help them use their God-given gifts. Thank you, Jenny. Sarah says, encourage and challenge and guide. I think those are all great things. Another model that I sometimes use, and I shared this with the class that I have today, but I really think as a coach, we're not in the driver's seat. We really are in the passenger seat. I think great coaches are in the passenger seat. The person you're coaching, it's their life. So they've got the wheel, they've got the accelerator, but you might have a map. You can give directions, as Jenny was saying. Here's Joe again saying, ask, listen, ask clarifying questions, affirm, and celebrate. I mean, there's so many things that coaches do that contribute to the growth and life of people, and I have to kind of agree that coaching takes energy. It's something goes out of us, and so it's not surprising that sometimes we run out of gas. We don't have enough energy. The fire goes out. So that's really what coaches do, and there's not just one way to be a great coach. I know we might have some people in the room or online that are thinking about being a coach. And I guess to you I would say this does not mean you need to become a different person. I think your best way to coach is with the context of who you are as a person. If you don't do it that way, you'll never be able to sustain it. But if you use what God has given you, there's something sustainable and dare I say, enjoyable about it. That's part of what sustains you. The joy of being who you are, the joy of using what God's given you and using it for other people. So when we talk about a strengths coach, that's really what we're talking about. It's not about being a therapist. It's not even about being a pastor. It's really about being someone who is a fellow follower of Christ that's along for the journey and helping people get where they need to go, where they want to go, where God might want them to go. That's really what a strengths coach does. And so we want to kind of continue our thinking here. We've got a chance to take a little poll here. And for those of you in the room here, we'll count hands. But I think those of you online are kind of be able to kind of answer these questions, and I hope you do. How many of you have been trained as a strengths coach? So raise your hand or whatever we do online here so we start to know how many trained. Okay, I'll count in the room here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And that's right. We've got people raising their hand on this end.
Okay,
it looks like just about, so far, the first probably 15 people showing up have all been trained as coaches.
Okay, so the people on the line here, the first 15 people are, you guys can see it better than I can probably. So we've got people. Okay, the next question is, how many of you have been coached? It looks like more people in this room have been coached than are coaches. We have a lot of people in this room who have been coached. How about out there?
Yep, and so I just cleared it. So again, go ahead and raise your hand if you have been coached.
Raise your hand online if you have been coached.
Yep, I'm seeing just about the same number of people raising their hand, at least 15 to start off with.
Okay. So we've
and I'm
got
sure it's more than that.
Okay, great. Okay, we've got some more questions here. Those of you who are coaching, how often are you coaching? And you've got this is multiple choice. This is easy. You know, you like this test. A, regularly, more than once a week. B, fairly often, a couple times a week. Occasionally, a few times a quarter. Rarely, a couple times in the last month. Not at all. I can't remember the last time I coached. So let's get some responses here. In the room, we'll kind of do this while people are responding online. How about more than once a week? I'll raise my hand for this one. We've got a couple people more than once a week. Fairly often, a couple times a month. Got a couple, 3 doing that. Occasionally, a few times a quarter. Good. Rarely, a couple times in the last 6 months. And not at all, I can't remember. We didn't have any D's and E's in this room. How about in the group here?
We're still answering. We've still got a few people.
Okay.
And we're going to go ahead and we'll get your response. It looks like right now it's somewhere between occasionally and rarely.
Occasionally and rarely is where the bulk of people are at. And that's really what we want to kind of do a little more about. I mean, now, I understand that I'm talking to you as someone, I get paid to coach people. That's different than I'm guessing most of you. I don't know for sure. There might be some of you out there that this is oh, here we go. Okay, thank you. Now we start to see the results here. 6% regularly, 11% fairly, 19% occasionally, 19% rarely, 6% not at all, no answer, more. So obviously what we're trying to figure out is how can we get people coaching more? Is that because people as coaches are somewhat hesitant to do it? And there could be a variety of reasons for that sometimes, or there aren't enough people to coach, or I don't have enough time to coach. Why is that the case? And that's really what we want to think about. So I thank you for kind of taking part in our, I guess I can't call this a Gallup poll, but it is a poll here. So keeping the fire alive, sustaining yourself as a strengths coach. And this may be one of the reasons we're not coaching as much as we'd like to, is because sometimes coaches run out of gas here. And I like this passage of Scripture, why did not our hearts burn within us while we talked to us on the road? This is kind of a post-Easter story here on the road to Emmaus. Jesus and his disciples, when he were with them, they were kind of on fire talking. And so that's really what we want to happen as well. Sustaining yourself as your coach. Here's a couple of things I would like to suggest that you think about. First of all, what you bring to coaching. And this is an exercise that we did with people today. What is it about that you could bring to coaching? And I'll just give an example of myself. one of my themes is I'm a learner. What I bring to the coaching environment is I'm really quite interested in the people that I coach. I'm curious. I become a student of people, and being a student of people has helped me to be an engaged and interested coach. And that's one of the things I bring is my curiosity. It's not the only thing, but I think being clear about what it is that makes you, that can help you be a great coach. I think the other thing that is important to realize is that there is not just one way to be a great coach. I think sometimes that's what discourages people from being a coach is they look at somebody else and they see how they do it and they think, I don't do it that way. I must not be a coach. But I really would encourage you to think what you bring to coaching. The other thing I want you to think about is what coaching brings to you. I wish I had $1 for every time I heard people say, I love it when I help people come to this aha moment. You know, that moment of discovery. I was talking earlier today to our class. I was a pastor for 23 years, and the part when I stopped being a pastor in a church and had a broader ministry, I worried that I might miss out on some of what I called those holy moments in life and death. When you really got close to people during a time of great joy or a time of great sorrow, I worried that I would miss those. I didn't realize that in the process of coaching people, you also have those holy moments. I think when you get close to the soul of a person, there is something powerful and indeed holy because it is God who has put that soul within a person, the being of who they are. And so that's one of the things that really coaching brings to me is the opportunity to be around when someone makes a discovery. But there might be other things that coaching brings to you, and I'd be interested. That might be something that some of you might respond to. I don't know if I have that information on my slide here. If you have, tell me about some of the things that you get out of coaching. I think that's part of what sustains us. Chat, okay. Okay, it looks like, what does coaching do for you? What does coaching bring? So as some of you say something, I'll read that. But that's part of what sustains us. I don't think there's anything wrong with receiving. I think sometimes we think coaching is just about giving, and it is primarily giving. And obviously, I think we're taught that it is certainly more blessed to give than to receive. It doesn't mean that it's bad to receive. It's okay to be on the receiving end of something sometimes. You probably ought to get something out of this. If you get nothing, now I don't think your primary motive should be for receiving, but I think that's part of what sustains you is if you're aware, what do I get out of this? A sense of satisfaction in helping people or an opportunity to learn from other people. There's lots of things that come from that. I think also pay attention to the results. That is the what of your coaching. It looks like I've got some answers here. Let me kind of just read some of these. Let's see. Rebecca said, gives me life. Yeah, I think it's life-giving. I think when you get close to the soul of a person, both your own or someone else, it's life-giving. Michelle said this, through coaching, I get more understanding of my family and my dynamics. Isn't that the truth? To some degree, you learn from the success and to some degree the failures of other people. It's instructive, so it's a great way to kind of help yourself. I feel as though I'm living my gifts when I coach. I love helping people come to know themselves with a strength, from a strengths perspective. Ken Buck says this, I get so much joy from helping people discover their strengths and to help them channel them to help others. Melissa said, I'm a relator, so I find joy in leading others to the depths. Yeah, for some of us, there aren't many places where you can go deep in life. This is a place where you can go deep, for those of you who might have themes like intellection or relator, those kind of deep themes. It's a place where you can really make that happen. So don't try to hide the fact that you get something out of this. I think it really is, it's a part of what sustains people. And, you know, let me just say, I have spent I can't say I have spent the past 14 years coaching someone every day, although I have spent the last 14 years thinking about my own strengths or someone else's strengths every day. And I have coached a lot of people. In fact, Monday morning before I got on the plane, I had 3 coaching calls. Last week, I had 2 or 3 days where I had 7 or 8 people that I coached. So you can do this a lot. I could do it, but I think I get, as I said, the expectations that I have for myself as a professional as opposed to someone who's doing this as a volunteer is different, but I certainly can do it. Also, remind yourself of the purpose of your coaching, the why. And that's, to tell you the truth, why I love teaching coaching programs in faith-based groups, because there is usually a purpose, a higher purpose. And obviously, I do this in corporate America. It's often about helping have greater performance, obviously. But I think it's both about people and performance. And that's really the purpose. I want people to do well, and if I want people to do well, they have to be well, getting people into roles that fit their souls. And so I think that's important no matter where you're at. Let's see, we've got some more responses here. Let's see, the accomplishment of the presence of the Holy Spirit at work. Yeah, I think that's the purpose here. It's where our faith kind of interacts with this that really gives it purpose. And so I think doing this in a faith setting is part of what sustains it as well. Sustaining yourself a coach, what to do. Okay, and I think I've already talked about this a little bit. First of all, be realistic about your investment of time and energy. I mean, sometimes your passion takes you beyond what you're kind of capable of doing. And so be realistic about how much time and energy you have to do in this. And maybe, you know, we looked at these, how often do you do that? Maybe doing this once a month is kind of what's right for you. Maybe, but here's the thing. Let me kind of encourage people to do a little more, because here's what I've found. The more I did this, the better I got at it. And the better I got at it, the less work it was. And the less work it was, the more fun it was. And the more fun I had, the better I got. And the better I got, the better people got. That's really why doing a little more can be not only good for you, for your parish, for your community, but when you get better, the people if you do this once in a blue moon, guess what? You're going to be a little bit rusty. And when we're rusty, we're not as good. So it's kind of keeping it alive, doing it a bit more frequently, not overextending yourself, but trying to do it a little more, getting a few more reps under your belt. See your coaching as ministry. We've talked about that. Remember that coaching expertise will only come with coaching experience. One of the things that I find, I see a lot of people who come to this program and they never really do anything with it. And part of the reason they don't do anything with it is they feel incompetent. They feel like I'm not very good yet. And they're not willing to get started. And there are themes that kind of cause us to do that. I've got a couple of them that kind of cause me to do that. Not just in this, but I have a hard time getting started because I'm not good enough yet. And to tell you the truth, I don't think people get good at this until they start doing it. The way that you learn it is you do it. You practice it. And every time you have a strengths conversation with a person, you learn something about a theme. So I would say be patient with your own development. Don't over-expect that you're going to master this immediately. I don't know if there's anything more complicated than a human being, and so to expect that we're going to be masters and understanding that just with a couple of days of training and a few sessions that we have. So give yourself a break. Be patient with your own development, but don't let your feelings of kind of inadequacy keep you from starting, because I find that learning is rapid once people do this. Let's see. We've got some other, see if we've got anything else that anybody has said here. Enables me to learn more deeply what individuals are really looking for in life and what's important to them. let's see. If we don't have opportunities except occasionally, that's what we do. What do we do to get better? That's a great question. Somebody's saying, I'd like to coach more, but I don't have anybody to coach. I think, and this is one of the things that I didn't have on the list, but I think that I would add it, how to sustain a coach. I think coach other coaches. Practice on each other. I mean, and it doesn't mean each other in your room. I think if we've got, 70, 80 people across the country, it's pretty easy. We could create a network of people who would be willing to practice on each other, keeping the fire alive by coaching other coaches, because I think that's one of the things that helps. It's a little bit like it's when taking the time to have that conversation with another person, kind of honing your skills. And I don't think you can do that in any way other than kind of talking with people. Okay, here we go. Let's keep moving here. Sustaining yourself as a coach. What to do? Take advantage of continuing education. And I think that can be a lot of different things. With social media, there are websites. This is an example of continuing education. This strengths and engagement community. Being involved in these calls, I think, is just a wonderful idea. Gallup, in the very near future, is going to be starting something, a webinar, a free webinar where people can get online. It's going to be called Called to Coach. And every time we do this, we'll have a person who is a coach, probably one of Gallup's internal coaches like me or someone else, kind of tell their story, how they do it, what they do, how they go about coaching. We'll probably also get people outside of our organization. Who knows? Maybe some of you will call you up and say, would you be, just like Stephanie and Don called me up, I might call one of them up and say, hey, would you be in our coaching call here? The Call to Coach, because I think we get inspired, we get educated, we get fired up as we listen to how someone else does it, how they sustain themselves and how they succeed. So take advantage of any opportunities you have for continuing education. Identify the aspects of coaching that you find most enjoyable or meaningful. Maybe you really like coaching young people, or maybe you really like coaching older people, or maybe you like working with couples, or maybe you like people who are kind of trying to kind of find a particular career. They're kind of in a career search mode. Maybe you like that. Maybe you like to help people within the process of spiritual formation. Find your coaching niche is another way. I don't think you have to be coach to the world. Find the place where you think you might have the greatest impact and the greatest joy. I don't think just one or the other. If you have impact and no joy, you're not going to sustain it. If you have joy and no impact, guess what? Your people are not going to come back. But think about both of those things. Also, identify the types of coaching that fill you and the types that drain you. I'd also think about, okay, what kind of coaching don't I like to do? One of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes people send people who are having marital problems to me. And I found that I'm not very effective with that. That may have, now I like taking people who have a good marriage and making a great marriage. Maybe everybody likes that, but I think some of you are just the opposite from me. You love it when you've got somebody in trouble and you get a chance to fix it. But know the kind of coaching that fills you and the type that drains you. Also, take advantage, thank you, Stephanie, take advantage of the recertification that Gallup offered. Stephanie said that, I didn't say that. You learn new stuff, it's great. And we do try to come up with new stuff. I mean, we have been, for those of us who do this every day, we make discoveries. And that's really what we try to share on these recertification calls. What else are we learning about the instrument, about this philosophy? And so that's another opportunity. Thank you, Stephanie. Let's see, here's another one. I belong to an Agile coaching circle in the San Francisco Bay Area. Great place to learn new coaching skills and to practice them. I think there are skills and knowledge relating to coaching as well. It's not just talent. That's part of it. But maybe there's a coaching class in a local university. Maybe there's a kind of another kind of coaching certification that you might want to pursue. That's another thing to kind of help sustain yourself. Okay. What not to do. Avoid Lone Ranger coaching. And I think that's a lot of times what happens when one person from a coach or from a church or a parish comes to a place, they hear about it and they go back, and it's like an ember separated from the campfire. Once it gets away, the fire kind of burns out. So stay connected. And again, this is a plug for this kind of thing that you're doing here. These monthly calls is one way to make that happen. The other thing that I find sometimes is kind of problematic for coaches and gets them in trouble sometimes is when they over-own another person's development. They take their responsibility too seriously for someone's spiritual growth or for someone's personal development. And that's why the model that I mentioned earlier, you're just in the passenger seat. You're not in the driver's seat. You're along for the ride. You certainly can be helpful, but it's not your life. It's their life. They ultimately have to decide. There's a passage in Galatians where Paul talks about how as followers of Christ, we're to bear one another's burdens. And that's, I think, part of what coaching is. But there's another place in that same passage where he says, and each of us must carry our own load. So to some degree, it's their backpack. You can put it on your back for a while, but eventually you got to take it off and put it back on them. And I think some coaches get in trouble because they're walking around with everybody's backpacks on their back, and they over-own. So another thing that I have learned sometimes from my own mistakes. Okay, it's time for another Gallup poll or Stephanie poll here, whatever we want to call this. What best describes your coaching experience? Pick all that apply. Attending coaching certification mostly to learn about my 34 and or advocate for strengths in my parish or diocese. That's why I attended. Would do more, but parish diocese provides little opportunity to coach. Would do more, but don't like to market myself. Love coaching and have more than enough opportunity opportunities to coach. I have no time to coach. These are all kind of responses to what best describes your coaching experience. So in the room here, attended coaching certification mostly to learn about my 34 and or advocate for strengths in my parish or diocese. Raise your hand if that applies to you, okay? We've got some hands up here on that one. Would do more, but parish diocese provides little opportunity to coach. Don't have enough people to coach. Would do more, but don't like to market myself. Any of you coaches but not salespeople? That would be me. If my coaching relied on me selling something, I would do very little coaching. But I have people in my organization who sell programs where I get to coach, and I have schedulers who have my calendar who administer my life. If that would all rely on me, I would not have 8 or 9 coaching sessions in a day. Part of that is what helps. It's a system that helps to perpetuate and encourage coaching. And I think sometimes that's what might be missing. I don't know if we have any results to our poll here yet.
We're working on it. We have a couple of people who are somewhere in the middle. They haven't hit submit yet. So as soon as they do, the poll will close, and we'll be able to see our results.
The polls will be closed shortly. Okay. I'm projecting a winner. No. Yes, go ahead. We've got a question in from the room here. Lone Ranger coaching is when it's where you're kind of isolated, where you don't have a community of coaches or supporters, where you try to just do it all on your own. And I think there's something about a community of coaches that adds learning, it adds support. It could be an opportunity where you could hone your skills to some degree by coaching each other. So, but it happens sometimes when a parish or a church can only send one person here. They come here, they get all fired up, and then they go back home and nobody else gets what they're talking about. I think that's partly why Jesus sent out the disciples 2 by 2. he knew what happened with Lone Ranger disciples. I think the same thing happens with Lone Ranger coaches. They kind of burn out on their own. So that's really, does that make sense? Okay. Okay, we've got our report up here. It's kind of 26 for that first one. 21% would do more, but don't have enough opportunities. I think that's what that means. I don't see all the questions anymore, so I think you can see the results here. It's not a problem with time. It's a problem for some, but that's not the biggest challenge to coaching, as not having enough time. It seems like it's more we don't have people to kind of help us do this. Okay, let's see. Okay, sustaining yourself as a strengths coach. Find the best way for you to contribute coaching, advocate, administrator. Now, we're talking about coaching, and there might be some people in the room here that think they ought to be a coach when maybe they ought to be one of these other things. It's almost like we need people in sales and marketing for coaches. I mean, what do people with sales and marketing do? They make known what we have to offer. It's a little bit like the difference between evangelism and discipleship. People who bring them in and then people who build them up. I think it's the same. That's how things operate in the church. And some of you, as I said, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a marketer. I'm not an administrator. I'm not very good at organizing things. The people in my class can tell you that for sure. But I've got help. I've got people who do that. I've got people who administrate this program here. I've got people who sell it, partners back in Omaha. And I think to some degree that's what needs to happen at the local level as well. Who can help get the word out? And you don't need to feel like you're a second-class citizen if you're not a coach, because a coach is only as good as their marketer, their evangelists, and their administrators. I really think that's key, and I think it's something that I think will help to sustain the coaching programs in church when we get a little more of the infrastructure. It's really the infrastructure that needs to keep it alive. How do we get more people? How do we spread the fire, attract more people to the transforming power of coaching? And how are we doing on time here? Okay. I want to hear from you. Again, we've got another poll here. And the question is, for those of you who have coached, what is the greatest reward? What is the greatest obstacle? So I'd like to, how about in the room here? I'll try to get some of you to answer. Let's start with, I think we've talked a little bit about rewards already, kind of what people get out of it. Let's talk a little bit about what's kind of an obstacle for those of you who have coached. What's something that kind of gets in the way? Yes. Okay, he said the thing that takes a little bit of time. It doesn't happen overnight. To some degree, that's an obstacle. It's not. It doesn't happen just with one session. It takes a few times. We've got some people here talking about greatest obstacle, participants availability, which is about schedule to some degree. So here's one of the things that I'm going to suggest that is quite interesting. Sometimes I think when people think they're going to coach somebody, they have to do it live. I mean, face to face. One of the things, let me tell you how I do almost 90% of my coaching. I would say 95% of my coaching is done on the telephone. It works. You can, people talk about, well, I can't read people, but it works. And if it makes it more efficient, that might be one of the things that we can think about. Instead of driving across town to meet somebody at Starbucks for a coaching session, maybe I can save a little time for them and for me if we just do it on the phone. And I've found that people actually are less self-conscious when they're on the phone sometimes as opposed to sitting in front of you. They feel a little less exposed. So that might be one of the things that we might think about. Let's see. see if I can read some more things here. Reward, Larry says, my individualization loves to meet people and know their stories. I get to walk alongside in their strengths-based journey. Gwendolyn says, people that feel that this is just another program that will come and go, whether they are involved or not. Yeah, I think that's a great. Do we kind of frame this as a program, or is this? I heard Monsignor talk earlier this morning, and I just woke him up. I think no, he didn't. He's back. He was listening to every word. But he was talking about how this is not just a program. It's not. And he spoke with. If you know Monsignor, he speaks with conviction, and I believe when he said that. It's not. And I think that's part of why this has taken root in this place. It has become a way of life. It's how we treat each other, how we think about each other, how we consider, how we help people grow, how we live with each other is cognizant of who we are. And so I think that is really an important thing. Sarah says, an obstacle, once they are hooked and get the coaching, then what? And I think that's a great question, Sarah. And I think part of that is to have coaching that has some kind of goals. What are we trying to accomplish? And to some degree, if a person accomplishes a goal, what they were trying to do, maybe it should be done. I don't think every coaching engagement has to be a lifetime engagement. Maybe it's a time, a season, when people are open to learning about something. And that's something we're going to talk about a little later. And maybe we'll jump into that conversation now about what I call the seasons. I think there are times in people's lives when they are more open to coaching. There are openings, like the doors are open and it's easier to come in. The windows are open. There are times when people are closed. And I guess you can try to beat the door down, but it might be smarter if those of us who are coaches would be more aware of and receptive to the openings that we find in people's lives. And I've kind of jotted down some of what I consider to be the openings that might be opportunities. The beginning of something could be the beginning of a marriage. It could be the beginning of as a life of a follower of Christ, confirmation. It could be the beginning of being a parent. It could be the beginning of retirement. I mean, I think there are lots of beginnings in life when people tend to be more open and responsive to help. I don't know what's ahead of me. So you think about marketing this, that might be one way to kind of fit it to some of the seasons of life that people are in, saying, here's how strength can help you retire. In fact, that's a book that I'd like to write. I'm going to retire. I might do a kind of research in my own life here. But I think there is a strengths-based approach to face retirement. How can I use my strengths now that I don't have a full-time job anymore? Because I think we pour so much of our strengths into our profession. So the beginning of something. The other thing is the end of something. You know, the end of an era is actually, I guess that's another way of saying the beginning of something else. That's really saying the same thing. So the end of something or the beginning of something might be a good time to think about that. Another season, and maybe none of you ever have been in one of these seasons where you are stuck or stagnant. You know, where you're just blah. And I think there are times in lots of people's lives where they get to that moment where, you know, I'm just stuck here. And I think if we let people know, hey, this is kind of normal. People do get stuck. They do get stagnant. But we think we could help you. We think the answer to your stagnation or your being stuck is inside of you. As part of an educational program, that's, to be honest with you, where most of the coaching I do is a part of some other educational program. We have leadership programs, I get to coach people. We have management programs, I get to coach people. In your church, you probably also already have some programs. Maybe you have some kind of a leadership program, educational program where you're teaching people how to be leaders. I think this is a great place where coaching could be integrated. You can make it part of the program, and it would really make it better. Maybe you have spiritual formation programs, educational programs. Coaching is often a part of those already, and maybe strengths could be incorporated into that. Here are some more seasons. during a natural life transition. That's a little bit like we've talked about the beginning, the end, but it's a period of transition when you move to a new community, when you join a church. There are lots of different transitions in life, moving from married life to divorced life, or moving from life married to widowed or widower life. There are transitions that people face. When facing a significant challenge or opportunity, I think sometimes another way to say it is a significant problem. You know, there are people who have, I lost my job. That's a significant challenge in helping people kind of deal with that. Or we have a person in our family that has cancer. It could be a great opportunity to kind of help. How are you going to deal with this challenge within the context of the gifts that God's given you? How can you not just survive, but how might you thrive? There could be a whole ministry around something like that. And it's not just about the challenge, about opportunities. When people, talking to people about their dreams and their yearnings, having a group of people who think about dreams that they have either for themselves or for their organization or anything. I think having a dreamer group and thinking about how can I use my strengths to kind of make that dream come true. When joining or leading something new, I think I've talked about that already. As a simple investment in self, how many of you know people who buy a membership to the health club and then they don't go? Yeah. I mean, we spend money investing in our physical health. We might help people think about wellness. This is another way to think about wellness. Marketing this is a way to take care of yourself. Have a coaching session. Pamper yourself. And get better at who you are. You'll feel better. You'll look better. That could work. Career or calling planning. I kind of put both of those in here. Again, it's about, okay, what do I do with my life? I think that might be, there are points in people's lives. I think at the beginning of an adult life is when we're thinking about career. Then sometimes people have a midlife kind of crisis. Yeah, I think I want to do something else. I mean, it seems like we had a couple of people in our group talk about that today. They were doing one thing and something happened and they went a different direction. I think that's a time when people are open. I think another time when coaching can be very helpful, strengths coaching, when performance improvement is needed, when something's not getting done right. I mean, this may not be the easiest, but I think it's really valuable. And it's when people are, we assume that when people are not successful, that they don't want to learn and grow. And I think this might be a way that we could actually do something about that. Let's see. We've got some comments here. I just want to read some of these. They're having conversation. This is Joe Kavanaugh says this. As I travel, the most common issue is that most coaches don't have enough people seeking to be coached, so there's a lack of opportunity to coach. Being coached must be promoted by leadership, clear expectations and outcomes that can be achieved. So I think do we have an expectation that it's not weird to be coached? I think sometimes we think about this. What if people felt about the same way about going to the doctor? Well, I don't know if I want to go to the doctor. I have I have a temperature, but I really don't know if I want to go. If we felt the same way about physicians, what would be the state of our physical health? And I think the same thing is true about our kind of emotional health. Let's try to remove any stigmas. Because you go to a coach does not mean there's something wrong with you. I think sometimes there is a stigma. It's a little bit like, therapists used to have a kind of a stigma. And I think that some of that's going away, but there might be some residual effect to that. Question? Okay. Yes.
Hey, Dawn, if you guys are still there, we can't hear you on your end.
Yeah, I have to repeat the question here. So
Okay.
I'll repeat the question. It was a question about that part of this is about trust. The first part this person talked about is part of what trouble we don't always trust people we don't know, and so I think that could be a barrier. How do we establish? How do we as coaches position ourselves as trusted advisors? And part of it is how, do we have a culture that kind of suggests that these people are trusted advisors? They've been trained, and so how do we position our coaches as people who would be trusted advisors? And how can we make sure that our cultures really show that this is a valuable thing, not a thing that really is a sign of somehow weakness or anything like that? In fact, people who take their growth seriously are seen as being honorable people and good people. So that's kind of a repeat of what we talked about, what the question was. Any other question? Here's another one from, let's see, Michelle. I think sharing how we have experienced basements of our own talent strengths lends them to trust us more, being vulnerable with them. And I think that's true, Michelle, but the trouble is if we don't get them to come, we can't do that. Our own vulnerability is kind of hard to express unless we have an opportunity to talk with someone. But I think you're right. I think that's vulnerability is part of how we get people to trust us. Let's see. Let's get another slide up here. Greater self-awareness desired. Some people just get to the point. I think sometimes people spend their whole life thinking about other people that they forget who they are. They get what I call amnesia. I think that probably happens occasionally to mothers that have spent their whole life investing in their children and they don't have a clue who they are anymore. I think it happens to professionals, men and women in very demanding roles who have to some degree sacrificed their own identity, their own soul to be successful, and I think they forget who they are. I think that is another moment, and I think if you put something in a church newsletter saying, do you have amnesia? You might attract a few people to come in. I'd like to kind of discover who I am again because I forgot. And when I don't know who I am, I'm not a happy camper. I think another place where coaching is important is I think sometimes self-esteem needs to be built. I think this is especially true, I think, for kind of middle school age kids. I mean, self-esteem is quite an issue, and I know that there are programs that are using this in middle school to kind of help make that happen. Relationship community building is needed. When new small groups or ministry groups get together where new people come, I think this is another great time to kind of have a group session, but saying if anybody would like coaching, individual coaching, to kind of help you go deeper, making that available as well. So lots of different seasons. Enhance your current coaching. Highlight the optimistic, hopeful nature of strengths coaching. Make sure that the path is clear and hurdle-free. Be aware of fears. I think people need to know that coaching does not mean you're going to come here and people are going to tell you what's wrong with you. Because sometimes that's what coaching is meant. In fact, in a lot of organizations that I work in, corporate organizations, the word development, you've got a developmental opportunity. You know what that means? You've got a problem, and we got to fix it. And that's out there. I think that's kind of conventional view. So the association is made from development to coaching, and they think it's okay. I don't know if I want to be fixed. And make sure that people understand that this is optimistic, hopeful, and holy in nature. We're not trying to figure out what's wrong with you. We know there's something wrong with all of us. We're trying to find out what's right with us, what's good with us, what's powerful, what can be great in the use for God's kingdom. And so make sure that the path is clear and hurdle-free. In other words, find out if things are getting in the way of having people come, whatever they are, but explore that. And also be aware of the fears. I think some people are nervous taking a psychological assessment. Partly because many of them that they've taken, I remember when I was in seminary, we were all required to take the Minnesota Multi-Phase Personality Inventory, the MMPI. And this measures psychosis and neurosis. Basically, they're trying to find out, are you nuts? And I passed. I mean, it meant I'm not nuts. But I think make sure people know this is not that kind of a tool. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that tool, by the way. But I think most people are not nuts. Yes, some are. Some have psychological problems that we have to measure. But most of us aren't. And so this does not have to be a negative weakness-fixing psychometric. This is trying to figure out what's right with you, what's wrong. And I think if we talked about that more, I think people say, hey, that sounds kind of good. I might try to do that. So try to be aware of some of the fears that people have. Why am I here must be intentionally and carefully considered. Make sure marketing and messaging reflect the many paths to coaching. Give people lots of choices, I think, is an important part of this. There's not just one way, there's multiple doorways into this. If there's just one path, it becomes a bottleneck. And communicate the value of coaching often and publicly. I'm going to read some of the comments that people are making here. We used to promote the full use of gifts in student engagement and use it when we evaluate all of our programs and events. It's seen as enhancing the experience. Thank you for saying that, John. I really appreciate that. So let's hear from you again. What would be helpful to you to support your coaching? What are some things you need as a person who is either a coach or aspiring coach? What is it that would be helpful to you? Anybody in the room here? That's a good question. We really don't have any, oh, the question was, does Gallup have any promotional videos? And at this point, we don't, but that's certainly a good thing. I think usually, we think of marketing as more of a local phenomenon, kind of something that fits here. So it's hard to kind of create a video that kind of fits every kind of culture. So we haven't done that. Let's see, we've got some comments here online. In my parish, it would be helpful to find a way to get more men interested in receiving coaching. Okay? So that might be, I wonder what that is. I mean, that seems to be kind of a challenge in other areas of the church. So how can we kind of masculinize coaching? So that's, maybe you do it, maybe it's about location, maybe it's about, do it at halftime or something, I don't know. But I think that is certainly something to think about. How can we, do we have adequate male coaches? That might be another thing. Do we have more women than men? I don't know what the thing is there. Let's see. Let me get some of these other comments here. More different types of programs to offer for various types of markets. And I think that's one of the things we've been saying. Strengths Quest has great webinar courses. Let's see. Tell them they will understand their wives better. Okay, that's from the one who, yeah. I mean, I have actually done a couples kind of program. And it wasn't a marriage, it was a marriage engagement kind of program where strengths was at the core of it. And it was really a very people were, they might have came and they were kind of at each other's throat, but by the time they left, I think they had a greater appreciation of their spouse because we forced them to think more positively about each other. And I think that's what happens sometimes. The thing that we appreciated most about the person that we married bugs us now. We've kind of lost appreciation. And I think we have to kind of get back to, okay, what's good about this? Instead of trying to change my spouse, I'm going to kind of accept them. So I think that's good. Here's another person saying, our female coaches are very busy, but our male coaches barely have anyone to be coached. Yes, we have an equal number of male-female coaches. So, yes. So it is a problem. In some places, the men are not coming. And maybe it's a bigger stigma for men than for women. We're big, tough guys. We've got to have it all together. We need to be kind of lone rangers, and that might be part of it. And as Dr. Phil would say, how's that working out for you? I've been participating as a coach in seminary, and the men are the longest talkers compared to the women there. Okay? Thank you. Root cause is male spirituality and lack of education in all churches. So this is maybe a more systemic problem in our churches about male involvement, and just another kind of indication of that. Then we've got Jeff says, this is a paradigm shift. How do you get the parish staff to buy into the program? That's another challenge. How do we get leadership involved in this? Sometimes this comes from the grassroots up, and there's pressure from above. How do we, in kind of business jargon, we say it's called managing up. How do you manage up? And I think that's certainly maybe some training around how do we influence the leaders. Leaders are hard people to influence. They like to be influencers, not influencees. But I think that is important. Anything else about things that would be helpful for coach? Here's one, a weekly email blast with inspiring and or resource material to all coaches that would be a way for us to all refocus and recharge on a weekly basis. Kind of using technology. I think that's something that I think Gallup is getting more involved in right now. We just hired a person by the name of Paul Allen, who was the person who created a website called Ancestors.com. Maybe some of you are kind of ancestor nuts and look back into your family. Well, he created the technology that is the platform in which this, and so he is now at Gallup, and he has a great vision for how we can use technology to do exactly what this person is describing. Sending an email out to coaches, sending emails, and that's what I was talking about earlier, this kind of a monthly webinar, Call to Coach. I mean, it's pretty inexpensive to kind of do something like this, and nobody has to get on an airplane and travel somewhere. Stephanie's out in the West Coast, and I'm here. If there's something way we can really connect people using technology, I think that is one of the things that might help to support coaches in what they're doing. So somebody's laughing at something. Oh, the last one. Okay, change the parish staff. We've got some comedians online tonight. Thank you. Yeah, we can see your name. Let's see. My thing is not moving. Does that mean we've come to the end? That means we've come to the end. Couple
I
things
think we
here.
have.
Okay, can I just say one more thing here, Stephanie, before I turn this over to you?
You can say more than one thing. You can say a couple of things.
No, let's see. You want me to say that? You know, one of the things that I think we talked about this earlier, so thanks for reminding me here. I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to have a general absolution as coaches, to tell you the truth. Because I think sometimes we just need to say, I'm sorry, I didn't do it right, I want to start again. I want to be forgiven of my failures, forgiveness of not work, and have a clean start. So I think that's certainly the case. The other thing is, I want to just say this. Jim Clifton is our CEO, and he obviously is the leader of our organization, and he has really had a new emphasis on the importance of the StrengthsFinder, not just for our company, but for the world. Don Clifton, who is the genius behind this all, I think he really didn't just see this as a kind of a little tool to help people figure out who they are. He thought it could be a tool that might help the world be a better place. And so Jim Clifton has set a goal. He would like to see 1 billion people around the world take the StrengthsFinder. Right now we have 8.5 million people who have taken it. We've got a ways to go. But the other thing is that he is making a commitment in our company for our organization to train 1 million coaches. Because if 1 billion people out there get their report they need help understanding them. So I'm glad we have a person from Nigeria here today. Maybe we'll go back to Nigeria and take this to help, because here's the deal. I think we are not really using the capacity of the humanity that God has created. Listen to this number. I wrote this down. 8 million people, 8.5 people have taken the strength fire. That's a lot of people. Do you know that every night 17 million children go to bed hungry in our country? 17 million people. And if that were not itself a big number, around the world, from 800 million to 1 billion children every night go to bed hungry. I believe that God has placed within human beings the capacity to be stewards of this world that He's given us. And we have not completely utilized the capacity in our parishes, in our communities, and this is why we need more people who will use their God-given abilities to help people understand and develop the capacity they have, because there are huge challenges that our worlds face, and God wants to use each one of us to meet those. So I just thank you for the opportunity to talk with you again. Hopefully the fire has been kindled a bit here. I get energy talking. My fire is burning. If yours isn't, mine is fired up more. And so thank you for the opportunity. Stephanie, I'll turn it back to you.
You are awesome. I just wanted to almost shout out an amen to everything that you were just saying, and we cannot thank you enough for being a part of this. And before you all drop off, we want to make an announcement, because of everything that you shared. This just falls right in line with what we've been thinking with CSEC, and really utilizing this wonderful community of people coming together. And we want to establish a strengths coach referral page of all of our certified strengths coaches that are part of CSEC, so that people can gain access to all of you. But going beyond that, just listening to some of the things that Kenneth was saying and Michelle was saying, this would be great to really form a community that could meet on a regular basis to keep each other fired up. And so we're looking for those leaders out there that might want to lead this initiative, that would want to gather these coaches together, create a page so that people can access you. And if you are willing to provide coaching virtually over the phone, to anyone who might need it, maybe even starting with our membership. We have over now 650 members in CSEC. So if you're not a member already, that's the other thing we would strongly encourage you to become a member, because this is a place where we can really grow this whole focus on strengths coaching, and we're excited to do so. So anything that we can do to support that, we would love to. So again, Curt, thank you for leading the effort on this. Thank you for all that you do, the blessings you bestow on all of us, and the gifts and talents that you give all the time, everywhere, every day. You are a blessing to this. And thank you all for being a part of our membership and being a part of this thing. It's just great to have you on this. So again, we'll go ahead and bring this to conclusion and say thank you, everybody, for your leadership. And we'll see you at the next CSEC Live.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Goodbye. Bye, Charlotte. And goodbye, everybody online. And the recording will be on the CSEC site in the next day or two.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. You betcha.